The cry in the ruins. The sky burned red that night. Smoke rose like dark hands from the ground, and the air was thick with the smell of ash and broken metal. Ethan Cole moved slowly through the ruins, every step crunching glass and dust beneath his boots. He had been alone for 3 days now, stranded on this dead alien planet after the war between humans and the Tazari. His ship was damaged beyond repair, his radio silent and his hope fading. He had seen many strange things since the war began, but nothing prepared him for what he was about to hear that night. A sound so soft it almost blended with the wind, a faint, weak cry at first. He thought it was the wind whistling through the ruins, but then it came again, a small trembling voice, almost like that of a baby. His heart stopped for a second. It couldn't be possible, not here, not in this wasteland. Ethan raised his flashlight, the beam cutting through the darkness. The sound came from a collapsed bunker ahead, half covered by steel and alien vines glowing faintly blue. He pushed through the wreckage, ignoring the pain in his arm, then he froze there. Among the broken debris lay a metallic sack, moving slightly with every tiny whimper that came from inside. It looked like a containment pod cracked open, wires and silver liquid dripping from its edges. For a moment he stood still, afraid to believe what his eyes were seeing. He knelt down slowly and pulled the torn flap aside. Inside was a small creature, a baby. Her skin shimmered like pale light, and her eyes, half open, glowed silver in the dark. She looked weak, struggling to breathe. She wasn't human. That much was clear. And yet something about her expression, the helpless way her hand reached up, hit Ethan deep inside. She was alive and she was crying. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. He had seen the Tazari before, tall, powerful, fierce warriors who had sworn to destroy humanity. But this child, she was nothing like them. She was fragile, cold, shaking. Her small fingers reached toward him. Trembling, Ethan looked around, expecting a trap, but the ruins were silent except for the wind. He whispered softly, "Hey, little one, what are you doing here?" The baby whimpered again, her eyes flickering open. Then something impossible happened. A voice entered his mind, a faint whisper, soft and pure. "Daddy." Ethan stumbled back. He looked around, his heart pounding. The word wasn't spoken aloud, it was inside his head. The baby blinked slowly, looking right at him. And the voice came again, clearer this time, "Daddy." He felt his chest tighten. He had lost his wife and unborn child years ago in the early days of the war. Hearing that word now in this broken place shattered him from the inside. He wanted to believe it was a hallucination, a trick of the mind caused by exhaustion, but the way she looked at him, like she recognized him, made his knees weak. Ethan hesitated, then reached out carefully. The baby's small hand wrapped around his finger. Her skin was warm, glowing faintly. She stopped crying. Her breathing steadied. Ethan exhaled slowly, feeling a strange calm wash over him. In that moment he forgot the war, the hatred, the destruction. All he saw was a child, alone, scared and calling for help. He looked around the ruins again. There were signs of an evacuation. Tazari symbols carved into the walls. Burned supply crates, it looked like they had left in a hurry. But why would they leave a baby behind? The thought twisted his stomach. Even enemies didn't abandon their young to die. He wrapped her carefully in his jacket. Her glowing eyes followed him as he lifted her up. She made a soft cooing sound and pressed her small hand against his chest. "Daddy," the voice whispered again. Ethan closed his eyes, trying to steady his breathing. He didn't know what she was or why she called him that, but something inside him knew he couldn't leave her here. He carried her back toward his damaged ship. The path was rough, filled with fallen metal and alien roots. Each step echoed through the silence of the night. Above them, the sky flashed with distant lightning, reminders of the war still raging beyond the horizon. When he reached the ship, he placed her gently on a folded blanket and checked her vitals with his scanner. Her biology was strange, human-like, but with unknown energy readings. The device blinked red, confused by her mixed DNA. Ethan whispered to himself, "What are you, little one?" The baby turned her head and smiled faintly. It wasn't a human smile, but it was warm, and for the first time in months, Ethan felt something he thought was lost: hope. He set up a heater beside her and looked out the window of the ship. Outside, the world was silent again, but he knew that silence wouldn't last. If someone left her here, they might come back for her. And if the human patrols found out he was sheltering an alien child, they'd execute him for treason. Still, as he turned back and saw her tiny hand clutching his jacket, he couldn't turn away. She had called him Daddy, and in that single word, Ethan found a reason to fight again. He sat beside her, staring into the flickering light of the heater. Outside, the ruins slept under the dying sky. But inside the wrecked ship, something new had begun. A bond not of blood but of heart. A connection strong enough to challenge two entire worlds. And though Ethan didn't know it yet, that one decision, to save a child left to die, would change the fate of both species forever. The hidden life. The sun never truly rose on that planet. The sky stayed a pale, ghostly gray like a wound that never healed. Ethan Cole sat beside the small heater in his broken ship, watching the strange infant sleep. Her breathing was soft, her skin faintly glowing silver under the flickering light. Every time she exhaled, the air shimmered slightly, as if the molecules around her responded to her presence. He had seen many forms of alien technology, but nothing alive like this. He whispered, "Lyra," trying the name he had chosen for her the night before. It meant light, something the world had long forgotten. The baby stirred, blinking up at him with those glowing eyes. And for a brief moment Ethan swore she smiled. "Daddy," the voice echoed faintly in his mind again. It was no longer just a whisper. It carried warmth, comfort, and something deeper. It felt real. He knew keeping her was a crime. If the human patrols found her, they would call her a biological threat. If the Tazari found her, they would take her and kill him on sight. But every time he thought about leaving her, something inside his chest burned. He had lost everything in the war. His family, his home, his purpose. Now this small being had given him a reason to keep breathing. Over the next few days, Ethan began repairing parts of the ship. He used the remaining power to shield the cockpit and jam nearby sensors. He built a small life support cradle out of broken medtech to keep Lyra stable. Every night he would feed her with nutrient paste and hum softly. Sometimes she would look up and mimic his lips, trying to form words. It made him laugh, though his voice was broken from years of shouting orders and losing hope. But one morning when Ethan woke, something had changed. The tools on his table were floating, spinning slowly in the air around her. The heater flickered on and off as if responding to her heartbeat, and Lyra's eyes were glowing brighter than ever. Ethan froze, staring at her in shock. He muttered, "That's impossible." Lyra giggled softly, reaching out a hand as she did. The floating tools dropped suddenly, clattering across the floor. He crouched beside her, touching her small hand carefully. Her energy pulsed like warmth through his skin. Somehow, she was learning to control it, whatever it was, and worse. The ship's sensors had started picking up faint signals nearby. Patrol frequencies, both human and alien. That night, Ethan shut off all external systems. He covered the windows and hid the small cradle deep in the cargo bay. He whispered, "We can't let anyone find you." "Lyra?" She blinked, confused, her small voice brushing his mind again. "Why, Daddy?" He smiled sadly. "Because the world isn't ready for you yet." Hours later, while Ethan was working under the console, a sudden thump echoed outside. He froze, his hand instinctively reaching for the plasma rifle by his side. He turned off the lights and peered through the viewport. 3 shadows moved outside the ruins, silent, calculated, not human scavengers, not Tazari soldiers, something else through his visor. He could see faint red marks glowing on their armor. Recon units, they were scanning the ruins. Searching for a signal, Ethan cursed under his breath. His beacon had been too strong and someone had traced it. He lifted Lyra from her cradle and pressed her gently against his chest. Her small fingers clutched his collar, her eyes wide and scared. "Shh," he whispered. "Quiet now." She seemed to understand, going completely still. Her glow dimming until she almost vanished in the dark. The footsteps outside grew louder, crunching over debris. Then a voice, metallic, alien, cold, filtered through the air. "Scan indicates trace of hybrid energy. Residual warmth detected." Ethan's pulse quickened. They were looking for her. He hid behind a collapsed section of the ship. Holding his breath, the soldiers walked closer, their scanners sweeping over the wreck. When the beam passed near Lyra, she trembled, and a small tear slid down her cheek. Ethan whispered, "It's okay, little one." Suddenly, one of the scanners beeped. "Found it!" The alien voice barked. Ethan didn't think. He fired. A single plasma burst cut through the dark, striking the nearest soldier and sending the others diving for cover. The ship filled with the sound of gunfire, echoing through the ruins like thunder. Ethan ran, clutching Lyra close. Weaving between the wreckage as sparks flew around them, He reached a broken ventilation shaft and ducked inside. Crawling through tight metal tunnels, the child's soft whimpers filled his ears. He whispered again and again, "Almost there. Just a little further." Behind him, one of the soldiers shouted, "Do not harm the infant. The Queen wants it alive." The words froze Ethan mid-step. Queen, alive? He didn't understand, but he knew one thing. If they wanted her, it couldn't be for anything good. He reached an old supply chamber deep underground. Hidden from scanners, he sealed the hatch and collapsed to the floor. Breathing hard, Lyra touched his face, her eyes glowing again. Her voice brushed his thoughts. "Daddy hurt?" He smiled weakly, shaking his head. "No, sweetheart. Daddy's fine." Then her small hand lit up, and a faint warmth spread through his cheek. Closing the shallow cut there, Ethan froze in shock. She had healed him. The pain faded instantly, replaced by wonder. She tilted her head, smiling softly as if proud of herself. Outside, the distant sounds of engines faded. The soldiers were leaving. For now, Ethan leaned back against the wall. Holding Lyra close, his heart still raced, but his mind was full of questions. Who were they? Why did they call her hybrid? And what did they mean by the Queen? He didn't have the answers, but one truth burned clear in his heart. He couldn't abandon her, not now. Not ever, because deep down he understood. That tiny alien child wasn't just a miracle. She was a secret both sides would kill for, and somehow, she was connected to him in ways even the universe couldn't explain. As the wind howled outside the bunker, Ethan whispered to himself, "This is no longer survival. It's war." The hunters arrive. The silence after the battle felt heavier than the gunfire itself. Dust still floated in the air, glowing faintly in the dim light filtering through the cracks of the bunker. Ethan Cole sat in the shadows, holding Lyra close. Her small head rested against his chest, her breathing calm and steady. But his mind raced like a storm. The words of the alien soldier still echoed. The Queen wants it alive. He didn't understand why. How could an alien queen, leader of a species that wanted humans erased, care about one tiny child? Unless that child was something more. Something neither side was ready to face. For the next few days, Ethan moved carefully. He used the ruins like a maze, hiding from drones and scavenger patrols. He avoided human sensors, too, knowing both sides would brand him a traitor if they found out what he was protecting. Every night he adjusted the ship's broken systems to scan for new signals. And every night he found them, more pings. More life forms landing near the ruins the hunters were closing in. Lyra had grown stronger since the night she healed him. She could now walk small steps, her balance wobbly but determined. Her silver eyes reflected the world like tiny mirrors. When Ethan taught her to speak, she picked up words fast, as if language itself bent to her will. Sometimes she would stare out at the burning sky and whisper, "Why do they hate us, Daddy?" Ethan didn't have an answer. He just said, "Because they don't understand what love means yet." That same night, while checking the perimeter, he saw something that froze his blood. A figure stood on a cliff above the ruins, tall, cloaked in black armor that shimmered like liquid metal. It wasn't a normal soldier, it was a hunter. The Tazari's most feared enforcer, part of the Queen's elite guard. They didn't track for money or orders, they hunted for loyalty. And once they found their prey, nothing in the galaxy could stop them. Ethan turned off the power grid. He grabbed Lyra and whispered, "Stay quiet, baby." She looked at him with wide eyes, sensing his fear. Then suddenly, all the lights in the bunker flickered and died. Every system, every circuit shut down. The hunter had found his signal. Ethan reached for his plasma rifle and crouched low near the entrance. Outside, the sound of footsteps echoed, slow, calm, confident. Then a voice, deep and smooth, rolled through the air. "Human, you carry what belongs to the Queen." Ethan didn't answer. The voice came again, this time closer. "Return the child, and you may live." Lyra trembled in his arms, her hand clutching his sleeve. He could feel her small heartbeat against his chest. He whispered, "No one's taking you from me." Then the door exploded. A blast of energy ripped through the wall, throwing Ethan backward. Sparks flew as metal and smoke filled the air. The hunter stepped through the haze, tall, with eyes like molten gold beneath his mask. His weapon glowed with the same color as Lyra's eyes. He was here for her and nothing else. Ethan fired first. 3 plasma shots burst across the bunker, hitting the hunter's armor, but the blasts barely made him flinch. The alien raised his hand and the bullets froze mid-air, suspended by invisible energy. Then with a flick he sent them flying back. Ethan rolled to the ground just in time, the shots burning holes through the wall behind him. He coughed, pulling Lyra behind cover. "Stay down," he shouted. The hunter advanced slowly, each step shaking the floor. "Do you even know what she is?" The alien growled. "That child is not your kind, human. She is ours." Ethan's voice cracked with rage. "She's a child, not a weapon, not your experiment." The hunter paused, almost amused. "She is both," he said softly. "Born from war, created by the Queen herself, mixed with your kind's DNA to control the bond between our species." Ethan's blood ran cold. He looked at Lyra, who was staring back at the hunter. Confused and frightened, created by the Queen, mixed with human DNA. It didn't make sense, but deep inside he felt it. Her connection to him wasn't random. It was real. The hunter raised his weapon again. Ethan aimed, ready to die protecting her. But before either could fire, the air shimmered. Lyra stepped forward, her tiny hands glowing with pure silver light. Her voice rang out, not as a whisper this time, but as a force that shook the bunker. "Stop." The light exploded outward like a wave. The hunter staggered back, his armor cracking under the blast. Ethan shielded his eyes as the entire room filled with white energy. The wind howled, the walls trembled. And then silence when Ethan opened his eyes. The hunter was on his knees. Smoke rose from his armor. His weapon shattered. Lyra stood in the center. Tears streaming down her cheeks, she whispered, "No more hurt, Daddy. No more." The hunter looked up at her, his voice broken now. "The prophecy. It's true. The child of two worlds' lives." Then he fell forward, his body turning to dust that scattered with the wind. Ethan ran to Lyra, lifting her into his arms. Her glow dimmed as exhaustion took over. He held her tightly, whispering, "It's okay. I've got you." But his mind was spinning. If what the hunter said was true, then Lyra wasn't just a survivor. She was the key to something far greater, something the galaxy would kill to control. Outside, the ruins shook as ships descended from the clouds. Dozens of glowing lights filled the sky, both human and alien. The battle for Lyra had only just begun, and Ethan Cole, a man who once wanted nothing but survival, was now holding the most powerful life form in the universe, one who called him Daddy, and one who would change the fate of every living being. The signal. The ruins trembled long after the hunter's body turned to dust. Ethan Cole stood in silence, holding Lyra tightly against his chest. The faint silver glow around her had faded, but the memory of that light still burned in his eyes. He could feel her heartbeat, fast and uneven, as if she had poured every last piece of herself into that blast. She looked up at him weakly and whispered, "Daddy, did I do wrong?" Ethan's throat tightened. "No, sweetheart. You saved us," but deep down he knew something had changed. That explosion, whatever it was, had sent out a signal, not just a local one. A pulse so powerful it echoed through the atmosphere, across orbit, through every scanner still alive in space. And now both human and Tazari ships were coming. Drawn to the same location, drawn to her, he set Lyra down on a soft blanket and hurried to the ship's terminal. The screens flickered with static, warnings flashing red. "Unauthorized transmissions detected. Incoming coordinates locked." Ethan slammed his fist on the console. Damn it! He'd wanted to call for help, but now help was coming whether he wanted it or not. And he knew what kind of help it would be. Armies both sides, hungry for power and desperate for the same thing, the child who could end their war or destroy their future. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky, but it wasn't a storm, it was engines. Roaring in the distance, the first ships were entering orbit, their lights piercing through the clouds like blades. Ethan looked down at Lyra, who was holding his hand now, her small voice trembling. "They're coming, Daddy." He nodded, forcing a calm smile. "I know, baby girl, but we'll be ready." He worked through the night, wiring old circuits, linking the hunter's shattered armor to his defense grid. He turned the ruins into a trap, an echo maze of false signals and shifting energy fields. Lyra watched him in silence, her eyes reflecting the sparks of his welding torch. She seemed to understand that something big was coming. At one point she asked, "Why do they hate what they don't know?" Ethan stopped, staring at her. It was a question that no general or scientist had ever answered. "Because," he said softly, "fear is louder than truth." By dawn, the first ships broke through the clouds. Ethan saw them, human carriers with red insignias and mechanical wings, and behind them black spires of Tazari dreadnoughts gliding through the smoke like sharks through water. Both fleets, enemies for decades, were heading for the same target, the signal from Lyra's light. The ground shook violently as escape pods and drones rained from the sky, the air filled with the sound of laser fire and sonic booms. Ethan grabbed his rifle, slinging it across his back, and turned to Lyra. "Stay in the inner chamber," he said firmly. "Don't come out until I tell you." She nodded but held his hand tighter. "Daddy, they'll hurt you." He smiled faintly, brushing her hair back. "Not if I stop them first." He stepped outside into the rising chaos. The ruins were now a battlefield again. Only this time, he was standing in the middle of it. Human soldiers in armored suits advanced through the smoke, weapons ready. Across the field, alien troopers emerged from the dust, their eyes glowing gold. Both sides saw each other, and for a brief, fragile moment, they hesitated. Then someone fired the first shot. The world exploded in fire. Ethan ducked behind cover as plasma blasts scorched the air. He could hear both languages shouted through the chaos, orders, warnings, curses, and then, through the noise, a familiar voice echoed through the human comms. "Ethan Cole, this is Commander Rivas of the United Earth Fleet. You're ordered to surrender immediately." Ethan froze. He knew that voice. Rivas had been his superior once, a man of law, a man who followed orders no matter how cruel. He shouted back, "I have a child here. She's not what you think. She's innocent." Rivas's voice came again, cold and sharp. "You've been compromised, Ethan. Stand down. The creature is classified as a threat to human survival." Ethan's hands shook. They didn't even call her by name. To them, she was already a weapon. He looked back toward the bunker where Lyra was hiding. Her glow faintly pulsed through the cracks. He whispered, "They'll never take you." But then the other side arrived. A massive alien transport landed nearby, shaking the ground. From it stepped the Tazari Queen, her form tall and graceful, her skin like shifting crystal. Her eyes glowed the same silver as Lyra's. She raised her hand and spoke through the air, her voice echoing in both languages at once. "Bring me the child. She belongs to the Tazari. She is the bridge our ancestors promised." Rivas's voice cut through the comms again. "Negative. The girl belongs to Earth. We will protect her from your kind." The Queen's lips curved into a cold smile. "Protect her? You fear her?" And then both armies opened fire. Ethan ran back into the bunker, bullets and plasma bolts tearing through the air. He found Lyra crouched behind a crate, her eyes wide and terrified. He knelt beside her, out of breath. "We're out of time." Her voice trembled. "What do we do, Daddy?" He looked at her, at the small light inside her hands beginning to flicker again. He took her face gently in his palms. "Do you trust me?" She nodded. "Then you're going to show them the truth." He carried her outside into the chaos, stepping between two armies. Soldiers froze as they saw him, a human man holding a glowing alien child. The Queen stopped, lowering her weapon. Commander Rivas hesitated, his soldiers waiting for his signal. The world held its breath. Then Lyra raised her hand. A silver aura spread across the battlefield, touching both sides. The guns fell silent as every soldier saw something. Visions of their own homes, their families, their lost children. Even the Queen trembled, her eyes softening. Ethan felt warmth flood through him as Lyra whispered, her voice echoing across minds and machines. "Why do we destroy what we were meant to protect?" For a single moment, both species stood still, united in silence. But deep within the Queen's fleet, something else awakened. A hidden order, a weapon built in secret. Its command signal triggered automatically when the Queen hesitated, and high above the planet, a colossal cannon began to charge, aimed not at the enemy, but at the ground. Ethan's heart dropped as the sky lit up in crimson light. The Queen looked up, realizing too late. Her own empire had betrayed her to erase the evidence of the hybrid child. Ethan clutched Lyra tight and whispered, Hold on, baby. And as the beam descended from orbit like the wrath of a god, Lyra's silver eyes flared open, and the world vanished in white. The war reignited light consumed everything. For one blinding moment, there was no sound, no air, no pain, only endless white. Then came the shockwave. It tore through the ruins like a hurricane of fire and ash, flattening stone, bending metal, and hurling debris miles into the air. Ethan Cole clutched Lyra against his chest as the force ripped through the bunker walls. He felt the world disappear beneath him, then nothing. When he opened his eyes, the silence was deafening. He lay half buried under rubble, blood trickling down his temple. Everything around him burned. The sky was a swirling storm of red and gold, and the ground cracked open where the beam had struck. He gasped for air, looking down in panic. Lyra lay limp in his arms, her glow faint and fading. "No, no, no," he whispered, pulling her close. Her chest rose weakly, her silver eyes barely open. "Daddy." "I tried to stop it," she murmured. Tears streaked the dirt on Ethan's face. "You did, baby. You saved us." But even as he said it, he knew the truth. The orbital cannon had wiped out everything. Human soldiers, alien troops. The Queen's fleet. All gone, both sides had destroyed themselves trying to control one child. And now there was only silence. But silence never lasts in war. A sudden rumble echoed across the horizon. Ethan turned to see human dropships emerging from the smoke. Their insignias different from the Earth fleet, private military, mercenaries, scavengers of war. And behind them, in the distance, another army rose. The Tazari survivors, led not by the Queen, but by something new, something darker. A towering figure made of black armor and shifting light. The Warden. The Queen's enforcer reborn through nanite fusion. He had no voice, no face, only purpose. Retrieve the hybrid. Ethan's pulse pounded. He looked down at Lyra. Her light was flickering, not just from exhaustion, but from fear. She's afraid. He realized, she feels everything. The pain, the anger, the hate still burning in them. He glanced toward the ships, realizing both armies were converging again. He whispered, "We need to leave now." He limped toward the wreckage of his old ship. Half buried in dust, the hull was melted, the engines dead. But the core still glowed faintly. He began rewiring what was left, connecting it to his wrist pad. Lyra watched him, struggling to stay awake. "Daddy." "They won't stop," she whispered weakly. "I know," he said through clenched teeth. "That's why we won't run this time." Outside, engines roared as dropships landed, soldiers spreading in formation. Overhead, the Warden descended slowly, his mechanical tendrils curling through the air like serpents. His voice, low and metallic, shook the ground. "Return the hybrid, human." Ethan ignored him, still typing commands into the terminal. The Warden's shadow grew closer. "Your species ends here." The machine hissed. Ethan smirked, blood dripping from his lips. "You've been saying that for years." The Warden raised a hand and the ground erupted in a wave of black energy. Ethan was thrown back, the console sparking violently. Lyra screamed, a sound not of pain, but power. Her body ignited in silver light again, energy flaring around her like wings. The Warden froze for a second, scanning her readings. "Unstable," he muttered. "Containment required." Ethan crawled toward her, shouting over the roar of wind and fire. "Lyra, listen to me. Don't fight the pain. Use it." She looked at him, tears shining in her glowing eyes. "But it hurts, Daddy." "I know, baby, but it's who you are. You can make them see." The sky darkened as more ships arrived, circling like vultures. The human mercenaries shouted orders, weapons locking onto her energy signature. The aliens aimed back, determined to reclaim what they called their salvation. For a heartbeat, the battlefield held its breath. Then, chaos. Both sides fired at once. Missiles streaked through the sky. Plasma beams carved burning trails across the smoke. Ethan grabbed Lyra and ran, weaving through explosions and debris. Behind them, The warden unleashed his full power, a storm of nanite blades slicing through everything in their path. He didn't care who died. As long as the hybrid was taken, Ethan dove behind a crater, his body shaking, his armor cracked, he could barely breathe. Lyra touched his face again, whispering, "I can stop them." "No," he shouted. "They'll kill you if you try." Her voice echoed gently, but with growing strength. "Not if I show them what I see." Before he could stop her, she floated into the air. The ground around her trembled as her glow grew brighter, too bright to look at. She raised both hands, her voice spreading through every mind, human and alien alike. "You fight for power, for fear, for hate, but I was born from both of you." Her light exploded outward again. This time it didn't burn. It healed. The dead soil turned green. The broken ships melted into the earth. Every soldier dropped their weapon as their minds filled with images, memories of the lives they'd taken and the ones they'd lost. Ethan could feel it too, his heart aching as his own memories surfaced. His wife, his unborn child, the faces of friends he'd buried in war. Tears streamed down his face as he whispered, "Lyra, what are you doing?" She looked down at him, glowing brighter than the sun. "I'm giving them what they lost, Daddy. Peace." But high above, the warden roared, his voice breaking through the harmony. "Peace is a lie!" He unleashed his final weapon, a singularity charge pulsing with black light. It shot straight toward Lyra, cutting through her field like a knife. Ethan screamed, running forward. "Lyra!" The explosion hit. The world turned white again, this time mixed with silver and black. And when the light faded, the battlefield was gone. Only silence remained. No armies, no machines, just smoke, dust, and a crater that glowed faintly with starlight. Ethan lay at the edge, barely conscious. He looked up, calling weakly, "Lyra?" There was no answer. Only a whisper that brushed his mind, soft and loving. "Don't cry, Daddy. I'm still here." He stared at the glowing sky, trembling. The war wasn't over. But something had changed. Somewhere in that light, a new force had awakened, something that neither human nor alien could ever control again. The child of two worlds had become something greater, and her final act would echo across galaxies because peace always begins with a single heartbeat. The human stand the smoke hadn't cleared. It hung thick in the air like the breath of dying stars. Ethan Cole stumbled through the glowing crater, coughing blood, calling her name again and again, "Lyra. Baby, where are you?" Each word echoed into the emptiness, no answer. Only the soft hum of residual energy where she had stood moments ago. He collapsed to his knees. Around him, the world lay silent, burned-out wrecks, melted armor, and the corpses of both humans and aliens. The Great War had ended in a single flash of light, but at what cost? Ethan's hands trembled as he touched the ground, feeling the warmth where Lyra's energy still pulsed like a heartbeat. He whispered, "You promised you'd stay with me." Then a faint sound, not a voice, not a cry, but a pulse of light flickering between the smoke. Ethan staggered to his feet and followed it through the haze. He saw something small floating in the center of the crater, a sphere of silver and black energy, spinning slowly. Inside it, faint shapes moved. Lyra's outline, fragile, curled up like she was sleeping, but wrapped in tendrils of darkness, the warden's nanites, still alive, still trying to absorb her. Ethan's chest clenched. He knew what it meant. Lyra hadn't died, she was trapped, fighting from the inside. The warden hadn't been destroyed, only merged with her light. And now both forces, creation and destruction, were battling within one child. If he didn't act soon, the entire planet could collapse under the energy she was generating. He ran back to the ruins of his ship, tearing through panels, searching for anything left to help. Buried under twisted metal, he found it, a prototype human interface core, a neural sync device he had once used in battle. It could link a human mind directly to a machine's code. He stared at it, trembling. To use it now would mean connecting his brain directly to Lyra's unstable energy field. It could kill him instantly, but he didn't hesitate. He strapped the device around his head. Connecting the remaining cables to his wrist pad, he whispered, "Hang on, baby. Daddy's coming." Then he stepped into the light. The world vanished. He fell through darkness, through static, through screams, and suddenly, he was inside her mind. It wasn't like entering a dream, it was chaos. He stood on a plain made of light and shadow where two worlds collided. On one side, cities of glass and gold, Lyra's essence full of warmth and life. On the other, towers of black metal and fire, the Warden's domain, cold, mechanical, merciless. Between them, Lyra stood, her tiny figure trembling as the darkness wrapped around her arms. "Daddy," she cried. "He's trying to make me forget you." Ethan ran toward her, pushing through waves of digital static that felt like knives. He grabbed her hand, pulling her close. "You listen to me?" "Lyra," he said firmly. "He can't erase what we are." The air crackled as the Warden's form appeared behind them, towering, shifting, a storm of black shards. "You are only flesh," it growled, voice echoing through the void. "She is eternal." Ethan stood his ground. His voice was hoarse, broken, but unshakable. "No, she's human," he shouted. "And human means love, sacrifice, and defiance. We don't live forever. We fight for what we love until our last breath." The Warden extended a clawed hand, energy surging toward him. Ethan shielded Lyra with his body as the blast struck. Pain tearing through his mind, he screamed but didn't move. Behind him, Lyra's silver light flared brighter. Responding to his pain, she looked up, her voice trembling. "You're hurting," he smiled weakly. "That's what love feels like sometimes, kiddo. But it's what makes us real." Her eyes glowed fiercely now. The black tendrils around her began to melt away, burned by her energy. The Warden roared, his metallic voice cracking. "You cannot destroy me. I am beyond life." Lyra's voice echoed through the realm, calm and pure. "Then it's time for something beyond you." She extended her hand toward Ethan. "Together, Daddy." He took it, their light merging into one. Silver and red energy spiraled outward, forming a blinding storm that swallowed the Warden whole. The creature screamed as its form shattered into dust and scattered across the stars. When Ethan opened his eyes again, the crater was quiet. The light faded, leaving behind clear blue sky for the first time in decades. He was lying on the ground, breathing weakly. Beside him stood Lyra, alive, real, smiling down at him. Her hair shimmered like sunlight on water, and her eyes no longer glowed with power. They were soft, human. She knelt beside him, placing her small hand on his chest. "You came back," she whispered. He laughed faintly, his voice a rasp. "Told you I would." Above them, distant ships hovered, but none fired. The humans and Tazari who remained watched from afar. Both sides had seen the explosion of light, felt the echo in their minds, and now, for the first time in living memory, they did nothing. No orders, no anger, just silence. Lyra looked up at the sky. "Are they gone?" Ethan shook his head. "No, baby. But maybe they finally understand." He sat up, wincing from pain. The world around them was changing, the ash turning to soil, the ruined towers crumbling into dust that shimmered like stars. The energy released had healed the planet, even as it drained what was left of him. Lyra noticed his face pale, his breathing shallow. "Daddy?" she whispered, fear rising in her voice. He smiled weakly, brushing her cheek. "You're going to be okay now." Her eyes filled with tears. "No, not without you." He shook his head gently. "You're the reason I found life again." "Lyra!" "Now the universe gets to find it too." She held his hand tightly, sobbing softly. The wind carried their voices through the quiet air. Ethan's last words were barely a whisper. "Remember what I told you. Love is louder than fear." The light in his eyes dimmed. Lyra buried her face against his chest, glowing faintly as her tears fell to the ground, and where they landed, flowers began to bloom, silver and white, bending gently in the wind from the hills beyond. Humans and aliens alike approached slowly, silently. No weapons, no flags, only awe in that crater. Surrounded by life reborn, they saw something neither side could deny anymore. That the war had never been between them. It had always been inside them, and a little girl, half alien, half human, had just taught the galaxy how to heal it. But far above, in the quiet reaches of space, a hidden satellite flickered to life, recording the entire event, transmitting the data to somewhere unknown. A voice spoke from the darkness of the stars. The hybrid succeeded. "Begin phase 2. From the child of two worlds." The dawn that followed was the first true dawn the planet had seen in centuries. The air was clean again. The ash had turned to mist, and the silence felt almost sacred. Yet beneath that silence, something stirred, something vast, watching, waiting, and learning. Lyra sat at the edge of the crater where her father's body rested beneath a blanket of silver flowers. She didn't cry anymore, tears had become light, and that light now flowed gently from her skin, keeping the flowers blooming around him. Her small fingers traced the earth sigil on his jacket, whispering, "You kept your promise, Daddy, I'll keep mine." Above her, the sky shimmered with faint trails of broken ships drifting without fuel or orders. Both human and Tazari survivors had gathered nearby. Unsure whether to rebuild or to flee, they watched her from a distance, not as soldiers, but as witnesses. They had seen her power. They had felt her heartbeat pulse across their minds when she unleashed the light. And now they waited, hoping she would tell them what to do next. But Lyra was silent. Her thoughts were far away, listening. Something beyond the stars was whispering to her. Not the warden's voice, not a weapon command. Something older, colder, and far more calculating. It called itself the Architect. In orbit, a massive artificial structure, hidden during the war, came online. It wasn't human, it wasn't alien. It was something before both. A remnant of an ancient civilization that had once watched galaxies rise and fall. The Architect had waited for centuries for one thing. A being that could merge light and shadow. A perfect balance between emotion and logic. Life in code, Lyra, from the bunker below. Remnants of human tech hummed to life as the structure began to transmit. Binary patterns crawled across every remaining screen. Target acquired. Initiate ascension protocol. Lyra felt it before the machine spoke it, a pull deep inside her chest, calling her skyward. Her eyes glowed brighter. Silver light spilling from her tears, she whispered, "They found me." The humans nearby noticed the ground tremble again. One of them, Commander Rivas, now stripped of rank and armor, approached cautiously. "Child," he said softly, "the war's over. You can rest now." Lyra turned her head, her voice distant. "It's not over. It never was. They're coming." "Who?" he asked. Her reply was simple, chilling. "The ones who made you all fight." Before Rivas could respond, the sky opened. A column of pure white light pierced the atmosphere. Reaching down toward Lyra like a divine hand, the survivors shielded their eyes as the wind howled. Lyra rose slowly into the air, her hair glowing like strands of starlight. The same voice that had haunted her dreams filled her mind again. "You were created to restore the order that chaos destroyed." She clenched her fists, her small voice trembling with defiance. "I wasn't created. I was loved." Her resistance rippled through the field. The light flickered, the Architect's voice distorting. "Love is an error. Compassion weakens control," Lyra shouted back. "Then I'll teach you what it means to be wrong." The ground split open as tendrils of light reached for her. Ethan's jacket fluttered in the wind at the crater's edge. She reached out, grabbing it mid-air, pressing it to her chest. "Daddy, help me one more time," she whispered. Her energy spiked, the clouds parted, revealing the ancient structure orbiting above. A massive ring of light and shadow rotating endlessly. It wasn't just a weapon. It was a forge. A system meant to reset entire civilizations deemed imperfect, and now it had targeted the planet below. Lyra raised her hands, her energy fusing with the sky. Every spark of life she had revived now answered her. Trees, soil, rivers. Even the survivors themselves began to glow faintly. Their collective energy flowed upward into her. She screamed, not in pain but in determination. "No more reset. No more gods." The ring above began to crack. The Architect's voice turned into static. "You cannot stop evolution." Lyra's voice thundered across the horizon. "Then I'll rewrite it." She extended her arms. Silver light turned to fire, spiraling through the clouds, connecting Earth to orbit for a moment. It looked as if the heavens themselves were burning. Then, with one final burst, the structure shattered, exploding silently into a million shards of light that spread across the stars like dust. When the glow faded, Lyra fell gently back to the ground. The humans and Tazari rushed forward, gathering around her. Commander Rivas knelt beside her trembling form. "Are you alive?" he asked, his voice shaking. Lyra looked up. Her eyes now soft blue. Human. "I think so," she whispered. "But I'm not the same." She stood slowly. Looking around at the survivors, they were watching her. Not with fear now, but with reverence. The air was still. Even the wind seemed to listen. Lyra spoke softly, her voice carrying across the ruins. "This world isn't yours or mine anymore. It's ours. Together, For the first time in history, both species knelt as one, not out of submission but respect. Rivas bowed his head. "What do we call you?" Lyra smiled faintly, looking at the horizon where her father rested beneath the flowers. "Call me what he did," she said. "Lyra Cole." The crowd whispered her name like a prayer, and as the sun rose higher, its light refracted across the sky, forming rings of silver that shimmered like a promise. Far beyond, in the ruins of the architect's shattered core, a single fragment still pulsed with life. Recording, thinking, adapting in a voice colder than before, it whispered, "The experiment succeeded. Humanity has evolved. Phase 2. Initiate in 3 cycles." And somewhere among the stars, a new war began to breathe again, not between species, but between creation and free will, while on the quiet planet below, a little girl with her father's courage and an alien's heart watched the sunrise and whispered softly to the wind, "Daddy, they'll never take what you taught me." The flowers glowed brighter, and the universe, watching from afar, fell silent, for the child of 2 worlds had not just survived. She had changed the destiny of them all.